Well, good afternoon and welcome everybody. My name's Helen Thompson. I think I know most of you, and I'm really excited to be back here on stage emceeing the 2016 Business Summit. This one is probably the most exciting business summit I've participated in. It's our 15th Business Summit, but it's been one that has really been a year in development and creation. This year's been very interesting in that we've had an advisory panel. Those who were here last year remember the SIG, and there was a lot of people asked for participation, more involvement. We've listened to your ideas and we've participated in many, many different ways. You in the audience come from every continent on the planet. We have speakers from everywhere but Africa as part of that. And we have over 400 people that are going to come through the Business Summit from today through to Tuesday. It's incredibly exciting. It's a time in which we are rapidly growing the commercial sector. You know, every year we stand up here and we say, this is still the fastest growing sector in Esri. And that's because of you. That's because of the amazing things that you do. You know, you are really here helping to make this an exciting place. You know, we're here because of the work that you do. It is we. It's not us, Esri, and you, our users, and you, our customers. This is we. And what you're going to see in this Business Summit is a lot of emphasis on community, about building relationships, about the opportunity to learn and share and grow, to have fun, to build new relationships with each other and take those relationships and profit from them. You're all Imagineers. You have the ability to think in different ways, in divergent ways. And we live in a time that's incredibly exciting. Tomorrow I'll talk about Industry 4.0, this new revolution that's happening around information and information science. The theme of the Business Summit is about real insights and real impact. And every one of our speakers today and tomorrow is demonstrating the impact that taking data, deriving information, applying analytics, working with their experience and knowledge is doing to have huge impact on their business. And those of you who've come regularly, we've got speakers that have come back again to talk about the changes that they've made. Some of those changes are absolutely phenomenal. Changes in patterns, changes in business behavior, changes in the way companies operate and the way that people think within those businesses. Because many of the things we thought about doing 2 years ago weren't possible. Today they are. I'm incredibly excited about what you're going to see over the next week. This week, we released things like Drone to Map. We released a major new release of Business Analyst Web, the mobile client supporting it, ArcGIS Online. We continue to innovate around things like 3D, and shortly we'll have demonstrations that show that. But the other reason you're here is to make friends. You're here to make relationships that change. And so one of the things I'd like you to do is to spend a few minutes to go meet somebody that you don't know. Find somebody that you've never met before. Share your experience, tell them who you are, and that can be a relationship that actually profits you, profits our community, and profits all of us. So spend some time to do that. All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you. So I genuinely hate breaking you all up, and it's so amazing and wonderful to hear this level of conversation. You know, from up here on the stage, you can hear this buzz, you can hear this excitement, you can hear this, just this sense of being together. that really makes this event special, makes you guys special, right? All the people that put this together, we couldn't do it without the energy, the feedback, the warmth that you give us, and that's a really important thing. So I just want to cover a couple of housekeeping things. We have this GIS terms and language survey, and I'm probably going to get told off by my boss who's sitting in the front here for telling you to do this. But we want to learn more about the terms that resonate with you. We want to understand how you want to see us express ourselves. What does Esri mean to you? What are the trends and the language which is important to you? So please go to this website. It'll be repeated lots of times on Tuesday during the SIGs, and other times there'll be a couple of dedicated workstations for you and go and take this survey. And as business users, it's those people that are changing at the forefront of big data and analytics and drones and business intelligence and supply chain management and all the other things that you do, you have a chance to change the way Esri talks to you. The language of the future, the language of today, okay? And a couple of other housekeeping things. You know, in terms of who you are, you're from different diverse backgrounds, doing many, many different things. We've got an incredible set of speakers and a great set of partners which are involved in other things, and they make this an important part of what's happening. But I want to make sure that some of the speakers we have, Cirque du Soleil and Nike, they're here with us because they have important messages. Their corporate organizations have allowed them to participate, but please, during that time, do not share on social media, on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, whatever is your particular poison, anything about Cirque du Soleil or Nike. If you do that, it makes it very hard for me personally, for the presenters professionally, and me professionally in the end. We're not recording their session, but everything else is being recorded and will be available afterwards. If you want to tweet about this, we encourage you. I personally am buying a prize of top prize for the best tweet, $50 Starbucks card, and for the other 5 good ones, a $10 Starbucks card. And we have a couple people in the front who are going to vote on those. So tweet away, share, take some pictures, part of that. And please don't Periscope this. You know, take photos, share them. But as I said, the video recording will all be available. So without any further ado, I want to invite Mike Johnson, my colleague and co-conspirator in all of this, who's going to kick off this session. So thank you. There you go, Mike.
Awesome. Thank you, Helen. Awesome. I'll just echo a couple of Helen's comments. Thank you so much for being here. This is, as Helen mentioned, the 15th Business Summit. We've had some really good business summits over those 15 years, but this is going to sound a little contrived, but this one is pretty solid. I'm super excited about this, and I'm excited to be here. It's always sort of interesting to watch that, meet each other thing that you guys just did. That you look at the introverts and they go, I got to talk to somebody, and then the extroverts are like, only one? I need 10. So thank you for doing that. This is what this event is really all about. And I get super excited. I get very motivated when I think about coming here. And just talking to a few of you today, this afternoon, it just brings back that motivation and excitement. And that opportunity to kind of share our collective experiences and challenges and accomplishments as it relates to how we use location technology in our companies is that stuff that kind of keeps us going. And that is really what this is about. That's what this event is really for. This is the Esri User Conference. This isn't the Esri User Conference. See what I mean? Get it? So, and I think sometimes we lose the opportunity to really think about all of us as peers. We are all members of this community of GIS professionals. And I've thought a bunch about kind of what that means, and it really has been on my mind to kind of talk about what is a community. And When, some people you talk to and they think about something like this. This is a community. This happens to be the city of Portland, Oregon, a place I really like a lot, actually, one of my favorite cities around the world, because it's vibrant, it's eclectic, there's a lot of athleticism there, there's a lot of recreation there, there's great arts. It's a really interesting place. Mount Hood is right off to the right of your photo here, if you've been there. So this is a cool place. Some people think about community as places like this. This is kind of an interesting little village. This is actually a replica of a town in southern Germany, in Bavaria. This town is actually in central Washington state in the US. This is Leavenworth, Washington. It's on the east side of the Cascade Range. And they've created this Bavarian kind of theme to what they do. And by the way, if you're not in Germany, which is, of course, the place to be for Oktoberfest, this is the next best place to go. These guys know how to do Oktoberfest. So Leavenworth, Washington, I'll give them a little pitch. I have nothing invested there. So this is another way to think about community, right? So, okay, I'm thinking about this, and let's check Webster. What does Webster say about community? And the first item there, number one, you see, kind of references the interpretation of community we just talked about. This is a place. People are there. They have some things in common. And it's interesting, right? But it's actually number two that I think is our community. This is an interesting statement that Webster has captured here that I think begins to represent what we're really trying to do. It isn't a place, it's a feeling. Interesting. And it's a feeling about sharing common interests and goals. It even uses the word fellowship. It's a little bit spiritual. I'm not going to get into the spiritual stuff, but fellowship is what we create and what we have here. And it's this feeling of common interests, commonality, what we're trying to accomplish as organizations, as individual professionals. That's what this is really about. And as I think about these definitions, this part of what community really is about, all of us are part of that community. We're really all peers. We all do this together. And Helen mentioned this a few minutes ago. It isn't like us and them, we're all here. And this forum, the Business Summit, the user conference this week, is a forum where we can all collaborate. We can all share ideas. We can all have this kind of fellowship experience. And by way of that, help us all accelerate the rate at which we're leveraging technology and the rate at which we're able to achieve our personal, professional, and organizational objectives for the companies that we work for. So when I think about this, it makes me think a little bit about some parallels in my personal life. So I'll share a little bit of a personal story with you, if you don't mind. When I was a young kid, my brothers and I would spend parts of the summer at my grandparents' dairy farm in southern Wisconsin, near Madison, if you know where that is. It's little bit distance from Madison, but we would go there. Any farmers here? Dairy farmers? No? Too bad, because we got one? All right.
We got one over here, too.
Awesome. That's great, because later on we'll have a little cow milking contest we're going to do. So behind the convention center over there, we'll just meet up over there and see who's really got the goods. So anyway, my brothers and I would go to this place, my grandparents' farm, and we'd have some interesting experiences there, obviously. 3 boys and grandparents is sort of a crazy mix, but there were 2 things that I really reflected on as I thought about this idea of community. The first one is when we were doing the chores during the week while we were there, other farm families in the area where there were a bunch of farmers would come to where we were and help with the chores. So the schedules for planting or weeding or, baling hay or, harvesting in the fall, they were just a little different, just different enough between farms that they would share resources. So a family would come and help us for a little while, and we would go to other farms and help those families. And there was a sort of one-to-one connection that we made with individual families. And at different times of the year, we'd help with different kinds of activities. And it's sort of this, I draw parallels to what I get to do sometimes, which is visit with each of you in your organization. So sometimes some of my team or I'm able to sort of come and work with you, and then you come back and maybe we meet up in Redlands or somewhere and you help us understand some things. And that's the corollary. That's sort of the community of building these one-to-one relationships. So that's the first thing that I recall and reflect on as I think about community in my personal life. The second thing was another phenomenon that happened on the farm. And that was that about once every couple of weeks or maybe once a month, all of the families would come together. They'd all go to one of the farms. There'd be this big potluck thing. They'd bring massive amounts of food, and everybody would kind of convene, and we'd have this major community fellowship opportunity. Usually was on like a Sunday, and everybody hung out, and everybody was there. So the conversations would happen, ideas would get exchanged about, crop patterns, and of course it's farming, so everybody talked about the weather, the latest tractor technology, and whatever else it was, right? And then sometimes the extended family would come. So, the implement dealer in the area, the guy who sold the tractors and the balers and all that stuff, they'd come and they'd kind of filter in, and we'd have that sense of community, and the veterinarian would come, and and so on, right? So this community would just grow, and it was this massive collection of people with common interests to have fellowship, share ideas, learn from each other, and help each other be successful in their farming business. Interesting. See where I'm going? This is our community. This is the expo area 2015 over in the convention center. You guys will see this over the next few days, this week. This is our community. This is like that big group of farm families that would get together at one of the farms once a month or so. Our community is still forming. We're still building. This event continues to attract more and more people. The Business Summit, the organizations with whom we work and who use our technology continue to grow and expand into new areas. And we're this community, especially here, of GIS professionals. This is what we do. This is our life work. And we are a unique blend of interest in technology and business experience. And our challenges is really, how do we bring together our understanding of what technology is all about with what the businesses we work for are trying to accomplish. That's really what we do in this community. We're a community of evangelists, and of pioneers. We promote this idea of location technology and how it impacts business. We support each other. We engage each other. We engage everyone, actually. And we share those experiences and ideas. Sometimes we challenge each other. Excuse me. When you challenge me, I love it. Like, what are you doing? Somebody called me the other day. Why don't you have these data available, these content available? Because this is extremely important to my business. Bring it. That's what we need to know. And in this, we create friendships. I love it that I can come here and see people that I sometimes only get to see once a year that have become friends in my career in this profession. And we create a collective success. This community is all of us. It's Esri people and you and each of your organizations, and it's our business partners that you'll meet later today. All of that's our community. We're also a community of technology innovators. I never fail to be impressed by what I learn about how people use this technology. You're going to see some pretty fantastic stuff that this gang has put together today that I really am impressed by, and I'm really hoping that motivates you in the way it motivates me. We share best practices around technology innovation and how we use it creatively, how we integrate it with other systems, and create new content through compelling analytics and visualization and insightful analysis. We collaborate through the identities that we bring to the organizations that we work with. And we enable the people that we work with to access this maps and information products on any device, anywhere, anytime. That's what we do. That's how we're transforming the organizations we work with. We really are driving to be pervasive use of maps. And we're persuasive in how we help people do that, because we're compelled to share how the use of maps and spatial analysis and geography can really impact the way businesses work. So the call to action. Here's where I think we can do some real damage, some really good things. This is an event that happens once a year, and it's a great community, and it's a great community building opportunity. But I think we need to do more than that. I think we need to take this experience. You gave us some really great feedback last year. We need the special interest groups that we host and support at this event to be a little different, so we've switched it up. And now all of us, members of this community, are supporting and facilitating the special interest groups. It isn't Esri kind of leading those exclusively anymore. This year we try to make a transformation. And so those will be led by you instead of just by us. We're just participants like you are. So the special interest groups are one way that we're beginning to carry that feedback into the community building activities that we're involved in. But another way that I'd like us to start to do even more than you are already is to bring this experience, this community, locally. Bring it to your town, your region. Help us create this community experience, this fellowship, this feeling of common interest locally. So we'll be supporting some events around the world this year to help with that. But in the same way that all of us are members of this community here today and this week, you can be facilitators of building that community in your local area. Who are the businesses and colleagues of yours that you want to expose and share the value of location technology? And bringing them together in a way that helps continue to build this community, not just today or tomorrow or this week, but throughout the year, extending this experience into other areas all year long is kind of the challenge I think we're into. You know, I get it. It's going to take a little bit of time to kind of make this happen. But if we leave here with kind of this sense and this sort of recommitment to helping build that community in our local places, in our local locations, then I think we're beginning to really help develop an understanding of how important spatial analysis and geography and mapping is to all of the businesses and colleagues that we work with. So that's kind of the call to action. I want to shift gears a little bit. I will be around obviously all week if you want to talk more about how we can help you and work together on building community. I'm happy to do that. That would be fantastic. So with that in mind, I want to introduce a few members of our community. These happen to be people that I get to work with not often enough, actually, but fairly often. Members of the Esri team that engages with you. You probably know many of them. I'll just go down the line and introduce them. That's Antonio on the end. Dennis, DJ we call him because there's multiple Dennises here. So Dennis is part of the team. Jason, who many of you might know. Jason is one of the more senior, not in a bad way, okay? One of the more experienced members of the team. Natalie and the other Dennis are all part of this team. These guys have some really, really interesting things to share with you over the next few minutes here, hour or so, about a couple of things. New capabilities in ArcGIS that we think you might be interested in. That we'll share with you. It's a little bit of a preview of a few things you'll see on Monday. So sneak peek kind of thing. And then some methods that I think transcend any given industry. They're going to share that insight, that information, that the work that they've been doing within the context of a use case for an industry. Get what I mean? They're going to share it in that context. So they're going to share technical capabilities in an industry or workflow use case context. But when I see the work that these guys have done, I see it, and this is maybe where you can help each other. Abstract that out and look at it across other industries and apply it to your industry. So, we're going to see some work that these guys have done in the insurance industry, and great. It's great analytics, that can also be applied over into other industries. So you'll hear a little flavor of that as we go through things today. So we're going to get started here. And I'll turn it over to you guys. There's half a dozen or so, handful of scenarios these guys are going to run through. The first one begins to look at how our technology gets applied in an analytical way, leveraging massive volumes of location content all over the world, and then applying some analytics to that to start to get some real insight. And then it wraps up with some cool stuff that DJ is going to show us. So, Jason, DJ, go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mike. It's estimated that data production will be 44 times greater in the year 2020 than it was in 2009. There's little doubt that all of us in this room are being impacted and challenged by this trend. Because so much of this data is spatial in nature, we need to continue to develop creative and new ways of managing, visualizing, and analyzing this data. Let's begin to explore how advances in the ArcGIS platform allow us to tackle this head on. As Mike said, we're going to explore this through the lens of an insurance scenario. Here we've applied some classic geoprocessing techniques to aggregate more than 6 million insurance policy data locations globally. These hex polygons are a pretty effective way at visualizing and gaining understanding of policy volume at a consistent geographic scale globally. As I interact with this data, we can see a higher resolution image be created no matter where I'm at. Of course, I can interact with this data, identifying the key metrics, the portfolio metrics that I'm interested in. So underlying this, we have individual policies, but we've aggregated those into these areas. We can see that more than 9,000 policyholders live within this hex area. We can also see the total insured value. That's a key performance metric that we as an insurance organization are tracking. We can also see the insured categories by type, such as windstorm, severe storm, flood, fire, and so forth. As I continue to navigate this data, we can see higher resolution data appear. Now, in addition to interacting and visualizing it, I can construct a dynamic summary of this content so that as I move throughout the landscape, I get an updated perspective, an updated view of my total insured value and those key category metrics that we looked at before. So a pretty effective way of exploring our portfolio metrics. Now, while this data is relatively stable in nature, we're adding policies, we're removing policies throughout the day, we can pre-aggregate this, right? So we can build batch processes to aggregate this and then share out to our stakeholders throughout the organization. Other data is more dynamic in nature. We've connected to live data feeds, various live data feeds from NOAA to USGS to other peril events such as global incident, and we're connecting to and dynamically accumulating those in these grids that we see here. We're actually using a spatiotemporal data store, right? So we're connecting to live data. Because we don't control this, we need to tap into those live feeds and dynamically accumulate that. So as I interact with this data, again, we start to see more detail. But also because we've been collecting this data for several years, we can look at really any time slice of this information. We can look at it by day. We can go back in time and look at a particular day, a particular week, or let's say a month at a time as we're looking at here. Let's take a closer look at Southern California. We'll look at the entire time span from 2013 to current day, and we can see where those aggregate concentrations of risk are. As I continue to zoom into Southern California, again, the picture becomes clearer, but I also begin to see our policy data in aggregate. And the time slider allows me to quickly get a perspective of where our insurance policyholder volume is relative to the external feeds of risk data. Next, we'd like to introduce you to an application we're calling Insights. You're going to hear a lot about this today, tomorrow, and throughout the week, and rightly so. This is really exciting technology that I think is going to transform the way we work with spatial data. So we're going to go through a little scenario here. Rather than just inspect our portfolio metrics, we're going to go through an ad hoc analysis and try to understand this storm's impact on our policyholders. So this was a widespread hail event in the south central US. And you can see the map is rendered by the size of the hail. Yellow is around 1 inch, all the way through the dark red being up to 4 inches. So for our analysis, I really want to focus on the most significant hail. In this case, we'll look at 1.5 inch and above. So that limits the area that we're going to analyze. We can see that here in the darker orange areas. I can also bring in that same content that we were looking at a second ago. So our aggregate insurance policyholders at those hex levels. So I can now see where we've got concentration policyholders compared to this peril activity in the hail. Taking this a step further, what I really want to do is connect to the policies themselves. You'll see Insights quickly render this massive data set displaying where all of those policyholders are. To aggregate, it's simply a drag and drop process. I can drag those policies back onto the map, and it asks me how I want to aggregate the data. So I'm going to aggregate it to the hail events, because really what I want to understand is summarizations or total insured value of my policies within these areas. And rather than just count, I'm mostly focused on total insured value, summarizing those within each of those hail bands. So within a couple of seconds, I drop my policies on the hail, and I get my result. Now I can restyle that through accounts and amounts in a thematic renderer, and I can see where those highest volumes or concentration of our total insured value are. So in addition to this, let's grab the hail data, drag it into a chart. So now I can get a perspective through a histogram of that total insured value by band. And because this is interactive, I can look at the sum of the TIV for each one of these hail swaths. So I think you can see the potential and the power of Insights. Thank you.
So Jason just walked us through some incredibly powerful new software and new capabilities that really are going to revolutionize on-the-fly analytics. And continuing with that same theme of new technology and how it applies to enterprise GIS and commercial business, I want to talk a bit about drones, because there's a lot of exciting developments in the last year or two that we're really happy and really excited to show you today. So by count of hands, how many here have either played with a drone or know someone who owns one? It's a lot of people around the room. Probably about 2 years ago, if I asked that same question, been far fewer people. In December of last year, the FAA launched a new registration process for drones. And since that time, in the last 6 months or so, nearly 500,000 people have registered their drones with the FAA. So one could say that drones are really taking off. And there's a shamelessly intended pun. But I'm just really excited about this. We all are very excited about drones. We all want to be able to take our favorite toys and actually make them productivity tools. We see massive amounts of opportunity with drones in the commercial space, whether it's in insurance, where we're doing post-event damage assessments, or maybe in real estate and creating 3D property slick applications, or even in retail for doing building inspections. Regardless of the industry, there are a massive amount of opportunity. And I'm really excited to show you some of those capabilities. To help guide our conversation, I'm going to show this in perspective of an insurance scenario where we're going to evaluate risk for a potentially problematic property that's in a flood zone. And we're going to actually quantify the level of damage that a 100-year flood would present. So let's jump into the source. The source is really just images. A drone is essentially a flying camera. As it flies along a flight plane, it'll collect images, and those images contain metadata. That metadata can include locations, angle of the photo, and other data that is equipped with the sensor. So what drone to map does is it gives us the ability to take that data, the images and that metadata, and convert them into map-ready outputs. And it does it in minutes or even hours if it's a really large data set. The types of outputs it can create are things like orthomosaics or point clouds, textures, surface models. And it does it very simply. So let's take a look at some of those examples. This is a project that I created from that same sample imagery that I just showed you. It created a single stitched image that is very high resolution, allows me to explore this particular area and get a real good sense for the quality of the ground. It also creates hillshades and surface properties. So we can evaluate things like changes in elevation, do flow, accumulation analysis, and the like. What I really like about this particular example is that we can see the flight line that the drone took, and we can even click on the individual images and see which image contributed to that part of the output. Another output that is created is probably my favorite, point clouds. Point clouds allow us to render and view those same images in 3D. So right now we're looking at a true color representation point cloud. And notice how all my views sync together and allow me to explore the property dynamically. I'm going to show a slightly different way of visualizing this same point cloud. This is showing us elevation classifications. So imagine being able to understand and see differences in elevation on rooftops, on the actual property itself, to be able to understand risk. One other major benefit of point clouds is that it really discretely defines objects that we can extract. So if you can imagine things like buildings, trees, automobiles, utility lines, all those things can be extracted using that LiDAR data and be used for more in-depth analysis. To help us do that, I have another map that I'm going to show that actually walks us through a flood analysis. Here we see those buildings that I've extracted to more discrete objects that I can work with. I'm going to turn on a flood layer that models a 100-year floodplain for this particular area. So now we can actually drill down and visually see the level of damage that these particular buildings would sustain in a flood of this size. This concept is nothing new. We've been able to evaluate floodplains and property locations for a long time, but now we can actually quantify the level of damage in a way we haven't been able to do so quickly before. To help us do that, I'm going to turn on a more detailed view of these buildings that models the floors. I also have a geoprocessing model that will evaluate which floors are impacted, get the square footage of those floors, and create a cost model based off of some assumption. In this case, I'm going to assume a cost of $45 a square foot. It will run. You see how it highlights the floors on the buildings that are impacted. In this case, all of the first floors on all these buildings are impacted. But what was not so obvious before was that the second floor on this particular building is also impacted. I'll open up the table, and here I can see the actual impacted square foot and the estimated cost given the cost model that I created. So we went from just raw imagery to a 3D model to understand flood risk in a matter of minutes. That's so incredibly powerful. And as we see the industries take on this concept of drones, we're so excited to see the creative analyses that you come up with, that you create, to actually make this come to life.
That's awesome. Nice job, guys. See what I mean? This is, massive amounts of data, very quick analysis to deliver insight. It helps organizations and individuals make decisions, processing real-time data, near real-time data into something really useful. Great work. I love it. Okay, shifting gears a little bit. Yeah. One of the things that we're all experiencing in our personal lives, and I think in business, is this is the style of interaction we have with many of the companies that we work with. So, for example, we all buy online and we buy in stores and we buy on our mobile devices, right? And that has very quickly over the last few years changed the experiences that all of us have and the companies that we work for and with have with how we interact with them. One of the implications of that is, from both a customer service standpoint and a business success standpoint, is how do we get those goods and services delivered to us where we need them and when we need them. So this idea that there are resources that we need to manage and optimize as the demand for that type of delivery service increases, that's a real problem. That many of the companies that I talk with are really struggling with how do we get our arms around this? How do we keep up with the pace at which this change is occurring? So Dennis and Antonio have a little scenario they want to share with us about this workforce optimization as it relates to this topic. So go ahead, guys.
Thanks, Mike. So the retail economy is rapidly evolving, as Mike had mentioned, forcing the majority of retailers to rethink historical strategies to maintain a competitive edge in the marketplace. To observe an example of these consumer demands, we don't have to look any further than day of and next day delivery. And this makes workforce optimization more critical than ever. Let's explore how optimizing our workforce with traditional and emerging spatial technologies can positively impact our business through increased efficiencies and effective customer service. So to kick off this scenario, I'd like to investigate the business rules used to generate the daily workforce plan for a Dallas-based retailer that provides residential and commercial delivery. So when developing a comprehensive workforce plan, we need to take into consideration each of the detailed business rules involved in managing and deploying our orders, our routes, our drivers, and our trucks. So this is Route Planner. This is one of those traditional technologies that I mentioned. And Route Planner is an application for scheduling and routing multiple vehicles at once. And we can describe our business rules, import our orders, build our routes, and deploy those routes to the field. So if we turn our attention to the left-hand side of my screen, we can see each of those unique sections that we can import our business rules. So for instance, I have my depot locations here, vehicle or driver rules, and even some specialties, territorial zones, or barriers. Now, once I'm happy with each of those different business rules, we can interface with our order management system, import our orders, and generate our routes. Once the routes are generated, we can see our map visualization as well as some charts that describe both the schedule and the routes themselves. So let's take a look at one of those. Take a look at 2502. That's actually the route of this good-looking guy to my left. We can see each of the different orders that are out for fulfillment today on this route and their sequence. So once we're done creating our comprehensive plan, we can operationalize this and deploy it to the field and consume it in other environments throughout the platform. So this is Workforce for ArcGIS. This is perhaps one of the environments that we can expect our dispatchers to use. So here we can see a list of each of our different assignments and orders that are out for fulfillment for the day. And this provides the right worker at the right place and the right time with the right tools to do the job. So within the dispatcher's web view, we can see each of the orders. Each assignment has its order ID, its location, its priority, due date, and time window that it needs to be satisfied within. We can also take a look at the status of each of our workers. We have a few workers in the field. We can see whether or not someone is working, on break, or perhaps even off of work. So in this case, we recently received an ad hoc order into our order management system, and it's in Dennis's vicinity. So I'm going to create a new assignment for Dennis. This is going to be a critical pickup, so I'll provide the priority. I'm going to make sure that it's been assigned to Dennis. And we want this done by the end of business today. Make sure he's got his work order ID. And this needs to be done now. We'll select the location, and we'll create this assignment. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull up Dennis's iPad. We'll get to take a look at what this looks like to him.
All right, so as Antonio's field-based counterpart, my view of Workforce shows me all of the different tasks that I have, where they are, and some details about them. Now I can see that Antonio did indeed send me a critical task, and to ease his mind and let him know that I have received this, I'm going to go ahead and acknowledge it. Now this is a little bit interactive. You're going to have to watch real closely, but everything I do, Antonio's going to be able to see in his dashboard. So as I hit acknowledge, his view will show that, hey, this particular task has been acknowledged and the worker is working on it. All right, so since it's critical, I'm going to stop what I'm doing and go ahead and work on this right now. So I'll go ahead and hit start. When I do that, you'll see that the task is now in progress. Again, Antonio, since he's kind of a helicopter, he feels a lot better about this. And once I've accepted a task, I have various different things I can do. Workforce actually integrates with a lot of our other apps. So if I'm doing field collection or surveys, I can launch right into those apps seamlessly. In this case, I just want to drive to this location to do the pickup. Apparently, it wasn't open. Let me try that again, guys. So, now that I'm in, I'm going to navigate to this particular assignment. There we go. All right, so it gets me my directions. I'm going to go ahead and start the navigation. You guys can see that I can just now route.
Let it run for a second.
And rather than make you watch this turn by turn, I'm going to go ahead and just pretend that I did it. And let's go ahead and mark this task as completed because I was able to perform the pickup. But first, I'm going to send Antonio a note saying that everything's okay. All right. So as I hit finish, Antonio's view will update. It says it's completed, and I can now go about my business doing the other tasks.
Thanks, Dennis. That's awesome. I'm not done yet. So in the same fashion that we're able to get real-time feedback from the field from Dennis, I can also monitor and assess in real time the status of each of my trucks and my drivers in the field. So now we're inside of Operations Dashboard, and what we can see in our map, in the gray squares, are each of our depots. We can see in the red pins our orders, our routes in unique colors that coincide with each of our trucks. Now I want to go ahead and search for Dennis. I want to keep an eye on him. He said I was a helicopter manager. I'm also going to take a look at his route itself, and we'll jump over to take a look. I'm going to filter out all the other trucks and routes so we can focus on Dennis. And I can take a look at the number of stops that he has for the day, the number of orders out for fulfillment that he's responsible for, as well as the service time and travel time that he's going to spend on the road. Now, in addition to this information, I'm also pulling in 6-second increments. I'm pulling telematics information off of his vehicle so I can understand in real time his current speed, percentage of out of route that he spent in the day, daily late arrivals, and any other information such as dynamic ETAs or idle time. Now, we don't have to focus just on these specific variables. They could be anything that you desire to focus on and monitor and assess in your vehicles. So this information can be used to track driver behavior and performance, to improve overall operational effectiveness and customer service. So using Route Planner, we developed our comprehensive schedule and plan that was based on the business rules that govern how we manage and deploy our orders, routes, trucks, and drivers. We operationalized each of those assets using Workforce for ArcGIS. We dynamically routed our vehicles in the field using Navigator for ArcGIS. And finally, we monitored and assessed those operational assets using Operations Dashboard.
Cool, guys. Antonio did a great job of summarizing some of the configurable apps and extensible apps and content and analytical capabilities. I think you get what I'm saying. Not only are these guys fun to work with, but the work that they do and these examples are just the beginning of what I think we can leverage. And if we think about how these capabilities apply across industries, these kinds of capabilities can really be impactful to the way our companies work. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, back over to Jason here. And Jason's going to share with us a little bit more about the insights capability. He's going to work with, again, some really massive data sets, interact with those. The interesting thing about insights is that you can see it's very flexible in terms of ad hoc analytics and mapping and discovering new patterns as you work with data. So Jason, I'll let you go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Yeah, I think another way of characterizing it is really stream of thought analysis. This is a very flexible environment for us to drag and drop and do sort of speed of thought analysis. Here we're going to take a look at customer and sales analysis. We're going to look at both in-store sales as well as online sales, really kind of picking up on that kind of changing landscape of the retail economy. Clearly, retailers are sort of challenged by this, understanding where trends and patterns in online sales are occurring and how that's affecting our brick and mortar stores. So to get started, we're just going to drag onto a card and we're going to look at our store locations nationally. So here's our US store footprint. And one of the common things that we hear retailers ask us to do pretty consistently is simply look at regional performance. We're organized by region. How can we quickly see where our patterns and performance are? Is the East Coast doing better than the West Coast? Where are my top performers and my bottom performers? We've also got regions in the map. If I drag that onto the map here, I can sync these two and connect them together. Simply by syncing them, as I interact with one map, the other is updated as well. So to aggregate to the sales regions, I drag the stores to the other card, and I could say, simply count or quantify the last 12 months of sales. And very quickly on the right card, we can see that updated. Again, we can see the bubble and we can see the mean as well as whether this particular district or region is left of average or above average. Another way we can look at that is through counts and amounts through color. This visual representation very quickly helps them understand who's about average and who's a better than average performer. So that's sort of an aggregate analysis, looking at regional performance compared to one region compared to the next. Let's take a further look at the store sales themselves. So on the left here, you see I connected to the stores initially. It's got a range of attributes that I can interact with as well. So let's continue on the sales by the rolling 12 months. And by applying the filter, I can see the histogram and the range of these sales. And based on my knowledge of these stores, really anything over $1 million is in our sort of top half of our store sales. And very quickly, I can apply that and see where these store locations are. And we can see concentrations on the West Coast and on the East Coast, and somewhat in the central U.S., but conspicuously in the sort of the North Central, we've got lagging sales. So there's a number of stores in the Chicago area that are doing above $1 million, but really only one in the Twin Cities that's doing above $1 million. So let's take a closer look at Minneapolis, St. Paul here. And I'll remove the filter so that we can see everything. Okay, so there's the footprint of those stores. Continuing on with the store data, I can apply a number of different rendering techniques to look at that store performance. So again, using the sales by the rolling 12, we can see where the counts and amounts, the larger symbols indicating higher sales. Another key metric that we want to track, sales don't mean everything, maybe sales per square foot is more meaningful when we're looking at these stores. So I can simply divide that by my square foot metric and to start to see that the playing field becomes a little bit more level. There's much more tight grouping of our stores, around $500 per square foot. So interesting, with a few clicks and symbolization techniques, we're able to start to begin to understand what's going on with our stores in the Twin Cities. Now, as I mentioned a second ago, we also have online sales from the last several years. By turning that on in this area, I can start to see where those occur relative to my in-store sales. I can also do things like aggregate this so that I can understand patterns and concentrations. So let's grab those sales, and I want to also look at that by zip code. Right, because zip codes give me a sort of a common reference point to understand my concentrations. So I'll spatially aggregate the online sales, and I'll also summarize the total dollars spent. So again, within a few seconds, now I could represent thematically the counts and amounts of online sales relative to my in-store sales. So again, interesting patterns begin to emerge. I can see concentrations of online sales sort of on the outside of the Twin Cities in the south and the east and the northeast. This is just a glimpse at understanding through this ad hoc environment called Insights, how we can begin to gain further understanding of the dynamic between our online sales and our store sales. Now lastly, let's take the time element of this online sales information and generate a chart. So it understands natively that this is a time-enabled field, and it's applying a trend line to it. And we can see some interesting things in here as well. We can see a spike in December, probably holiday era or holiday time store sales, and then we can see more recent trends as well as average dollar spent on our online goods. Thank you.
Cool. So what's interesting about that to me, I'll share a little comment, is this idea that, I was mentioning earlier when Antonio and DJ were talking, this idea that the shift in buying patterns that all of us are experiencing between in-store, online, and mobile is exactly what Jason was experimenting with here. So the ability to kind of combine these data sets to discover where those trends are occurring helps us begin to introduce and adjust our store development strategy, our mobile marketing strategy, our online strategy to reflect those changing patterns of our customer base. So that was kind of a retail example. Again, extrapolate that, the same thing in insurance, the same thing in other industries, real estate and so on. So really great insight from these guys. Okay. Shifting gears again a little bit, we keep shifting here. Natalie and Antonio have some really interesting things to share with us. So in the spirit of business, that's kind of why we're here. One of the other things that I am hearing more and more about as I talk with executives is this idea of business longevity. In other words, especially manufacturers produce products that use resources that they consume. And as they consume those resources, they begin to deplete the resource pool, right? Makes complete sense. So this concept of an idea of sustainability, that where businesses begin to look at the rate at which they're using the resources they need to produce products and how they replenish those is starting to become more and more interesting, especially in light of climate change and other factors in the world. So Natalie and Antonio have put together some ideas that, again, use maps, apps, configurable apps, and identity and real interesting content to kind of describe the scenario. And I won't steal your thunder, but this is some pretty awesome stuff that leverages some content that Esri takes care of that you may not know a lot about. So I'll let them kind of go ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Our world is in constant flux. Shifts in temperature, precipitation, population density, bioavailability, and numerous other factors make it critical that organizations take a holistic approach to business continuity. Because of these reasons, it's important for us to understand the sustainability of the land from which we source our raw materials. Through the lens of a large furniture manufacturer, we would like to look at how the changing landscape might impact our business and how we can utilize GIS to strategically plan for the future. In this scenario, our company's brand is built on the beauty and consistent quality of our furniture, and it's important to us that we live up to that reputation. For generations, we have manufactured our furniture from birchwood because it's known for its beauty and quality. If we want our company and its mission to continue for the long term, it's critical that we have sustainable birch resources for decades to come. Antonio and I are working on a project where we have been asked to answer several key questions. First, which of our existing sourcing areas are likely to be threatened in the coming decades? Next, where are the most viable alternative sourcing locations? And finally, what will the cost be of shifting our sourcing, both in dollars and in greenhouse gas emissions? So Antonio and I are going to use the ArcGIS platform to answer all of these questions. I'll begin our work by exploring the living atlas of the world. This contains Esri curated content that is available across the ArcGIS platform, so it's available in any of our analysis and visualization. Now, those of us in business are probably most familiar with the demographics and lifestyle data, but there are a number of other categories here that we can utilize for our work. Today, I'll explore the landscape theme and search for world ecological land. And here I identify the layer that Antonio has been looking for. This is actually a collection of numerous living atlas layers that describes the ecological and biological condition of the landscape. For each item in the living atlas, we get vast information about the source of that data, its intended use, and its methodology. This is going to be important for us to understand when it comes time to defend our final results. So to get started with our work, I'm going to compile a map of all the data we need to get started. Here we see that living atlas layer we just discovered. In green, we see the range of birch trees in North America. And I've also added in protected areas where we will not be able to source. And here we see our sourcing areas. In blue, we see locations where we are currently harvesting timber. And in purple, we see areas we hold in conservation that we might want to harvest from in the future. And finally, we see our mills. This is where we turn that timber into our legendary furniture. So I've shared this map out to our portal so that Antonio can get started with our analysis.
So as Natalie demonstrated, the ArcGIS platform provides rich, map-ready content that we can use in our data visualizations and analyses. In addition, we can utilize the same content to quickly model the potential changes to our sourcing areas across North America. In doing so, our team will be able to understand which sourcing areas will be potentially affected, to what magnitude, and whether or not we will need to shift our sourcing to some of these alternative sourcing areas. To accomplish this task, we're going to use GeoPlanner for ArcGIS. And GeoPlanner is an application that allows us to explore, design, and evaluate any number of different scenarios that we can use to best educate our decision-making process for a comprehensive sourcing plan. So to begin our analysis, I'm going to generate a new model. This is going to be a weighted overlay model that I'm going to leverage the world ecophysiographic data layer that Natalie had isolated inside of the Living Atlas of the World. So we're going to be using forecasted scenarios for temperature and precipitation change, as well as population growth and global land cover. Now, when I design my model, I'm given the ability to weight each of these different layers. I'm going to weight them equally. And then I'm going to ensure that we're only including land units that we can actually source from. And this is going to include areas that are currently cropland, grassland and shrubbery, evergreen forests, and deciduous forests. All of the land units are going to be discluded from our analysis. Now, when we save this model, it's going to run, and we're going to be provided with an output. Now, this model's output represents land stress levels and sourcing viability in the decades to come. Areas that appear redder are expected to have higher levels of potential stress, whereas areas that appear greener are expected to have lower levels of potential stress. Immediately, we can see that in central Canada, with our models and forecasts, we could potentially expect high levels of environmental change. Now, this is merely one scenario, and one of the powers of GIS is our ability to create any number of what-if scenarios that we can use in our decision-making process. So let's go ahead and evaluate two of these different scenarios. We've created 3 others here. So I'll turn one of those on. We're going to use the swipe tool to do this. So underneath, this is our sustainability model number 1 that we initially ran, which assumes the least amount of change in the future. Now, as we swipe across, and we see sustainability model number 4, which is the model that we just ran, and this model assumes the most amount of change to our environment. And by incorporating multiple scenarios into our planning process, we'll be prepared for nimble and agile decision-making in the event that either of these scenarios becomes true. Now we'll examine our scenario dashboard to view quantified measures of potential stress and viability to our current and future sourcing areas. If the results of our modeling and forecasting efforts prove to be true, a small amount of our current sourcing area will truly be viable by the year 2050. In contrast, a significant amount of our future sourcing area will be viable under the same assumptions. So now that we understand which areas may have high levels of potential stress, we want to focus our attention on these two particular sourcing areas, because we're going to need to find areas that we can phase in as we phase out this Winnipeg sourcing area here. Both the Edmonton and Calgary locations look like great candidates, and I'm going to pass these along to Natalie so she can do some further analysis, and we can use that analytical product in our final recommendation.
For this next step in our project, I'm going to turn to ArcGIS Pro and conduct some network analysis so I can answer questions for two sets of stakeholders. The first group has asked us to report on what any change in our sourcing will mean in financial terms. The second group has asked us to report what this will mean for our greenhouse gas emissions. With one model, I can report answers to both of those questions. So I start by bringing in those sourcing areas and our mills that we've shared out to our portal. And next, I've encapsulated my analysis inside of a model. Doing this will allow me or any of my colleagues to replicate this easily in the future when other sites need to be analyzed. So the first step here is to create an origin, destination, cost matrix analysis layer. And we'll do this utilizing an existing network data set in truck mode, because trucks will be hauling our timber from the sourcing to the mills. Next, I add those existing and potential sourcing locations as our origins, and the mills are our destinations. Once I run the analysis, I can then calculate the fuel cost and the greenhouse gas emissions for each of these potential locations. I also want to report these in relative terms, relative to our existing location in Winnipeg. I'll go back to the map and add in our model results. Our CFO and our sustainability manager are going to be happy to learn that these two locations actually save us money and reduce our carbon footprint. So I'll share this information back out to our portal so that Antonio can incorporate them into our final recommendations.
So Natalie shared her analytical results back with me and the rest of our team through the portal, and I'll add those directly to our map. Now, initially, we can see a few different things. The Calgary location, which is here on the left-hand side, we're going to call this our Calgary scenario. On the right-hand side, we're going to see our Edmonton scenario. And again, the Edmonton sourcing location is the location that is on top, whereas our Calgary location is here on the bottom. The Calgary sourcing location is slightly more costly in terms of dollar value and greenhouse gas emissions. But if we take a slightly more holistic approach to evaluating each of these different sourcing areas, we can see a different story. I have a few different indices here in my dials that help us evaluate each of these sites a little bit better. We have a water use index, land use index, and emissions index. And each of these index, we were looking for higher scores. So in the dial, we would see that if there was a higher score, we would be expecting higher performance in each of these different categories. So with this, on the left-hand side of our screen, again, we can see our Calgary sourcing location. With this information, it makes more sense for us to ultimately recommend the Calgary location as our sourcing location for the future. Now, this recommendation has solved the business challenge, saved our company money, and reduced our overall carbon footprint. We've accomplished this task by using Living Atlas layers from the Living Atlas of the world in analyses that we performed in GeoPlanner for ArcGIS and ArcGIS Pro.
Awesome. How many of you use the Living Atlas? So, a few. So I really am happy that Natalie shared that with you, because I think that's a resource that we as a community really under-leverage. So I encourage you to go check it out. It's available to anybody who uses ArcGIS, and discover its content and how you can leverage that content. GeoPlanner, an excellent app for the kinds of analysis that Antonio was showing you. Really, I really like this scenario a lot. And in the interest and spirit of this sort of idea of us as a community and us as really wanting to promote the use of location technology, this sustainability area is, as I mentioned earlier, really starting to become one of those important topics to discover. So sharing some of these ideas with individuals in your organization that are responsible for that part of the business starts to become part of the role that we play together. Cool, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
All right, so my colleague Dennis Kaplan here is going to share some really interesting work that he's been doing with the real estate industry. There are some information products and some analytics that Dennis is going to perform that I think are really provide some insight in that industry that are in some ways actually creating some real disruption and transformation in that industry. So Dennis, I'll let you just jump into it.
Cool. Thanks, Mike. First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here. I know it's hard to get out on a Saturday and get away from family, so thank you for being here. I know it's been said before, but we really appreciate it, and thank you. I'm going to be playing the role of a GIS analyst for a commercial real estate organization. So as we know, the economy has turned around. Properties are leasing and selling again. It's really exciting. Work is really busy. I work out of our San Antonio office, and dirt is being dug again. So it's exciting to see strip malls being filled up again and dirt being dug again. But this is great for business, but what I said, like I said, we're really busy. We're really busy doing a lot of busy work. Every time, I work all over the country with different brokers though, so not just in the San Antonio region. And every time our brokers need help, they're requesting me to fly out, and it's getting harder for me to fly out, all over the country to present our analysis. So I started to change up our tech and our organization a little bit. So for years, our organization has been utilizing something I think a lot of the audience is familiar with to help market properties. Let me change this here. So I think everyone's pretty familiar with the property slick or the property flyer. These have been great to share information about a property, and have worked for years for marketing properties. But as you know, they're very time intense. They're very resource intense to create. They're hard to manage, and they take us, the GIS analysts, away from doing our analysis. I mean, that's what we like to do analysis or custom analysis for our work. So, our office has hundreds of these binders. Talking about resources earlier, a lot of paper being printed, a lot of resources to store and manage hundreds of these binders that are collecting dust in our office and are sometimes out of date. So what I did in our organization is I introduced something that I call the public digital property book. Now these types of digital property books, we're utilizing these in our trade shows, on our public websites, for customers or interested parties to easily search for properties of interest. They can go into a region that they're interested in looking at. So let's say this customer is interested in the financial district in San Francisco. They're interested in properties of a certain size, let's say 50,000 square feet and above. They can find properties that they're interested in, but also get details about that property. Now, a little different than the property slick, that's a piece of paper that someone takes with them. This application lets someone actually type in their name and their email address to that broker that's assigned to that property. So it's obviously a little bit more interactive. This is great for the public. We get the information that the public needs to see. But internally, we're able to take the same data and make this for our internal brokers to search and utilize the environment as well. So this environment has the same data, but some different variables are exposed in this environment. So I've given the ability for the brokers that know that customer is looking for that one property in San Francisco that has 50,000 square feet. Well, the broker knows that, well, let me query that data and find that customer and maybe comps around the area that customer may be interested in as well. So they can get different, like I said, different variables can be exposed. So for example, we can expose maybe some monthly operating costs, the number of elevators, any information for that building that may be not really readily available for the public, but you want to share to your internal brokers. And you know what? We still want to share out that all-important property slick. And my coworker here, Gary, will show some ways to help automate these that we're coming out with that we're really excited about. So as you know, in the process of buying and selling properties, a customer talks to broker, broker talks to customer, some data may be shared, and a long time passes, and finally a final presentation needs to be created. Something that anybody can run is what I've instilled in my organization. So I introduced this concept of the digital pitch book to my organization. This is something that requires no plugin, just the internet browser and someone that can read the information off to the side. I kind of made it hopefully broker-proof, if that makes sense to a few of you in the audience. What's nice about this too is you have the main stage here and the information off to the side. So as I go through this, I'll kind of talk about the tech that I put into this for my organization. So right away, what you're seeing here is we're talking about a property that has available square footage in the downtown financial district of San Francisco. And as we know, San Francisco, office sales are at record high. And what I've done is I've incorporated some 3D into this environment here to make this a more compelling, more up-to-date presentation. But I also have given the ability to put graphics into this environment as well to see that the demand in 2016 for office properties is outweighing the supply in this market. Well, what's drawing this demand? Well, all the tech leaders, a lot of the tech leaders, I say all of the tech leaders, a lot of the tech leaders are going to the financial district of San Francisco, Google, Salesforce, LinkedIn, Uber, and that's where the majority of the workers are going to that area. And a result of that is causing the rent to go up in the area, as well as the occupancy rates are getting pretty tight in the area. Most people are having to go to the East Bay to get available square footage. And to show some information about this, really what we're doing here for my organization is I took the building footprints and I've extruded them to show the building height, but I've also taken our property data and attached them to here. So instead of looking at a thematic map or a heat map, I'm looking at a 3D color-coded heat map in this environment here to show occupancy rates. This is really exciting for us. I mean, we have not been able to do this before, and it's actually really quite easy to do. So kind of back to the story here. In San Francisco, there is available property, and this gets us to the property that that customer is interested in. This property at 388 Market Street, the Raven Center, is the property that we're interested in. Utilizing Esri base maps too, we're able to see the point of interest information on this map, which is pretty nice. So this particular property has the top floors that are available. So we have 50,000 square feet available at the top floors of this building, as well as the potentially what the build-out could be utilizing, looking at a floor plan around the area. A lot of the customers that we work with, they want to know, well, what's this going to look like outside the building? Is there a view? So again, being able to enable our brokers to click on this and say, hey, this is going to be the view outside your building is very powerful in this environment here. So as I said before, we worked with the customer, usually back and forth, and the customer usually gives us some data to analyze. And they gave us their employee data. And this is the scenario where they want to look at the commute times, because basically what we're presenting this to is the customers really wanting to relocate from the Oakland, California market to the financial district of San Francisco to be closer to that tech hub. And then on the side here, really this is a presentation inside of a presentation. So it's a pretty powerful concept here. So to kind of bring you through this presentation inside of a presentation, this is their current office in the Oakland, California market. We were able to bring the employee residences onto the map here. And through the online environment, I was able to calculate their average commute time was about 33 minutes. Now, moving to the financial district, this customer knows that it's going to be more money to move to financial district, but they want to be close to the tech hub. But the commute times, they're a little less. It's 24 minutes to get to this location. So they'll be saving them about 9 minutes to move to this location. There's many local amenities around this area. It is a financial district, so there's obviously lots of banks in this area too, but there's also fast food and the fitness centers to help them out there after the fast food. But we also were able to use the Esri environment too to bring in transit stops and then calculate the walk time to these transit stops. So it's less than 2 minutes to walk to the transit stop from these buildings. And then we usually end up saying, hey, this is a great location in the heart of the city. close to transit. So these tools have been immensely popular in helping us to win more business faster. The digital pitch book, the public property listing viewer, and all these other apps have helped us to win more business faster, enabling our brokers to act quicker. It's pretty exciting to be able to do this stuff instead of managing our property slicks. So that's been pretty exciting for us. So what I want to do now is turn it over to Mike, and thank you very much.
Nice job. Great use of 3D. I don't know if you guys have seen some of that City Engine and 3D work in ArcGIS, but incorporating that into a workflow and that little digital pitch book that Dennis was talking about is a story map. Many of you have used that. It's a really great way to sort of simplify the interaction that casual users have with this technology, and really powerful. So cool. Thanks, Dennis. We'll shift gears a little bit. I think we're going to get Gary Burgess involved. Heads up, I think we're going to run a little long on our 2:30 benchmark. So if you're cool with that, we'll just keep going. And I don't think you want to miss what Gary has to share. So Gary, you might know, it runs our software development organization in the business analyst area. So Gary has some interesting things to kind of share with us today in terms of how they're kind of evolving the business analyst environment. Gary's going to also be with us a little bit tomorrow and take this conversation even further. So he's going to preview some things for us now and then embellish on that a little bit more tomorrow. So
great, thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
All right, so Esri's business analyst helps organizations make smarter site location, customer targeting, and marketing decisions. Allows you to combine your own data with Esri's living atlas of demographic, lifestyle, behavioral, and spending data, and allows you to perform analysis on this data using smart mapping, location-driven analysis, and create reports. And when Mike asked me to talk today, and he said, you got about 10 or 15 minutes to show your favorite thing about Business Analyst here at the user conference, pick one new feature. And that's why I thought I'd show you what we're doing with custom reports, because it's really applicable. So there's two things I'm going to show you. The first thing I'm going to show you is a brand new report designer that we're introducing here at the user conference. We're really excited about it because it's going to allow you to create your own demographic reports. And then I'm going to pivot then, and I'm going to show you some skunkworks stuff right from the development lab of something that we're working towards our end-of-year release with something I think is really compelling and exciting about reports. So with that in mind, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my first demo here, and I'm going to use the Business Analyst web application, and this is something that you could do right now. So Mike shared with me before that not only was he grew up on played on a dairy farm, but he also has a passion for food trucking, and so let's imagine that Mike wanted to open up or choose a particular location for a food truck in the San Diego area, and this one happened to cater to people of Hispanic origin, and maybe they are wealthy, and he wanted to know not only what the population is like in this particular area, but what the businesses were like in the area. So, and previously, if you were to use Business Analyst to do this, you'd basically have to run 2 or 3 different reports to try to gather that information, and then kind of hunt and peck and find the content that was important to you. But now with our latest release, we've introduced a new build reports. And basically what this is a kind of visual, graphical interface for allowing you to build and create your own demographic reports. It's really kind of cool. So there are different ways that you can add content to the report. Probably the most popular way to do this would be that you would take content from our existing library of reports. So for example, I know that there's some Hispanic information on the Census 2010 profile right down here. So I can actually click on a section on the report and simply drag and drop it onto the report. And I'm now interactively building a report. And now I'm going to pick another section from the age by sex by race profile here. And I know that they've got some Hispanic population that's broken down by age. So I can click and drag and drop that right on the report. So that's really cool. So I've taken 2 different sections from 2 different reports, and I'm interactively building my own report. Now, what happens if there's some content on this particular section that I don't want or I want to change? Well, you can actually go in and start editing the report content. So if Mike's food truck really only catered to the young, so we could actually take some of the content here that we're not interested in, and we could actually just choose to modify the table here, and I'll delete this selected content. Really cool. Now, what happens if I now wanted to add up the number of people that are here? So, you would think this being a nerdy GIS company would make you write some query or do some sort of interactive analysis, but we wanted to make it super easy, feel like a spreadsheet. So this data that you're working with is very intelligent. And what I mean by intelligent is that when you select the content on the report, it understands what you're selecting. So, for example, here, I'm going to select all this content on population by age. And I again can click on my contextual menu, and I can actually now click the create totals, and it knows that I can sum this data. So I'm actually going to sum it, and it adds all the formulas here, and it actually even adds a nice little label letting me know that it's totaled. So that's pretty neat, right? Now, what happens if I wanted to represent this information visually? So again, I could take this content, and now I'm going to take the percentage of people broken down by age. I'm going to select this column. I'm again going to hit the contextual menu, and I'm going to say, let's create a chart at this point in time. And it gives me different options. If I mouse over these, it actually gives me a preview of what the chart will look like, and I'll go and add a horizontal bar chart right here. So I'll hit the edit the chart here, and I can do things like change the colors of my bars if I wanted to. I could go and give the chart a title. I'll give a very meaningful title. And then we can even choose to not display the legend at this point in time because it's really not applicable because it's under this information. So it's pretty neat. So I'm interactively building this report. Now, what happens if I wanted to add some business data to this report? Not only can I select from the library of existing reports, I can then now drill into that living atlas of demographic content that comes with the Business Analyst web application. So I could click on the business data here, and if I wanted to then add a whole bunch of information about the number of employees broken down by SIC code, I could choose to just kind of collect and select all that data, and we'll shift click here, and we'll add it to the report. Now, I'm just dragging and dropping variables. Now, what's really nice here is it's actually going to format that in a nice table for me. And again, to illustrate how this data is intelligent, I can select on the different fields. And now, because I've selected a set of employees, I can go here and click the calculate column. It knows that I can calculate % based on this. Again, hit one button and calculates all the percents for me. So, of course, I could go in here and brand this myself. We'll give this a nice logo, right? And we're going to hit save, and we'll give this a name, and we'll hit, and then what it's doing now is it's going to save that report template, and now what I can do is go and run that report for the convention center location I showed before, and it's going to download the report template I've just got. It's going to gather up all the demographic data, and the report's ready for me now. And now I'm going to open up this custom demographic report that had the population by race table, my customized Hispanic population, the graph that I just created here, as well as that business data where I've calculated the different types of percents as well too. All right, so thank you. All right, so I just want to emphasize again, everything that I've just showed up to this point is available right now. If you've got the Business Analyst web application or access to it, come and get it. If you want a more full-featured demo, come see me at the Commercial Island Tuesday through Thursday. I'd love to show you because this really was just a tease in terms of the capabilities. So I'm going to pivot now, and what you're looking at here is a very early prototype of our end-of-year release of the Business Analyst web application. So I'm going to emphasize again that this is a very early developer thing, and I don't know if brave's the right word, but I am about to demonstrate something that's pre-alpha, so this tends to work better if you do applaud, or it even does better if there's oohs and ahs in the audience. It does work well. So So here's how this is going to work. So we want to really revolutionize the whole concept of a report on the ArcGIS platform. So the reports that are created now is pretty cool, but you know, they're a little stale and dated looking, so we really wanted to modernize these reports and make them really visual. So the whole experience is going to be a lot more visual and a lot easier to use. So basically what will happen here is when you go in to build a report, our designers are going to work on 9 or 10 beautiful, ready-to-use, lovely-looking reports. So, you know, Dennis mentioned the whole concept of a property flyer. So this is one of the templates that our designers are working on right now. So the way that it works, I'll have different panels. You know, I'll have a picture here. I'll give you opportunity to do site facts about the size, a description, and basically the way that it works is you basically fill in the content that you want and go and update the report. So for example, if I wanted to edit this image here and we'll, you know, put a different building in there and we work with the report that way, and we just basically kind of apply the report that way. So we're building this property flyer, super easy to do. So I'm going to go back and build another one of these report templates. I'm going to select this one called the Housing and Income report. So again, if you like this report the way it is, you could basically give it your own title, put your logo in here, and you'd be done. But you could also interact and play with it. So for example, here we've got, you know, a map, a chart, and a couple of infographic panels. So we can move these panels around if we don't like the layout that's pre-chosen for us. So for example, if I wanted to switch the map and the chart, I could do so. That would be a good opportunity for an ooh and ah, I'm just saying. Right? So that's pretty cool. I could go in here and, again, if I wanted to adjust some of the chart options and I don't want to show the legend, I could do that. I really don't like legends, as you could probably tell from this demo. So now we've got some income data, so maybe I want to move the income data down here. All right? And now I want to replace this. I really don't want housing stats. Maybe I want to have some key demographic facts here. So at this point in time, I could actually replace this panel. I could put a chart here. I could insert my own image. Or I could pick from what we're calling infographics. Now, not only does the new report designer come with 10 or 12 beautifully designed report templates, we're going to have these infographic panels, that are being created by a really crack design team. They're really nice and beautiful, and just a really nice way to portray the visual information rather than just a table or a chart. So I'm going to pick this key facts right up here. And you know, at this point, I'm going to quickly edit this title here, and we'll call this Gary's. I can't spell my own name. All right. All right. I want a coffee card. All right. So we're going to pick a logo here. We'll hit apply. So I'm going to hit save now, and we'll call this the Housing Income Demo. All right, and now I'm going to save this, and this is what's happening now is just to show you how this is working and how this is going to interact with the entire ArcGIS platform. Here's my portal right now. I'm just going to refresh this right now, and you'll see what has just happened is that there's the Housing and Income Demo. So this creates this new item in the ArcGIS ecosystem called the report template. That's pretty cool, right? Thank you. So what's nice about this is that not only could I view this report as a PDF like I showed before, and you know, I'll show an example of that, but this is where it becomes really cool, and I expect more applause. So I could select this item right now, and I'm going to share this with the BA team. So let's imagine that now I've designed this report. So this whole experience that I've just shown you right here is probably where 99.9% of the people are not going to interact with the report this way. I'm the report builder. I'm the author. So now imagine like Dennis is out in the field and he's putting together what this package is that, and he wants to have one of these property flyers. And wouldn't it be really cool if he had that kind of same interactive appeal with the report? So with these report templates, I'm going to refresh now. This is a very rude sample application that I made just a couple of days ago, or our team made a couple of days ago, and it's just used to illustrate how you could consume these report templates in an interactive way. So I'm going to refresh this again, and you'll see here now it's picked up my housing and income demo. I'm going to select a location right here. And what it's going to do is, again, it's going to gather all that data, but instead of creating this dead PDF, it creates this interactive infographic-based report that I could play with. And this is a live report right here. You can see I can pan around, select another location. It animates, it creates, again, really, really kind of nice. And it's super easy to create one of these things. I'm going to quickly go back to the report builder and just show you how easy it is to build one of these things from scratch. So there's the reports that I've created previously. So you can also start from a blank template. So I'm going to quickly select one of these things here. I'm going to edit this, change the image. Okay, I'm going to quickly pick a couple of infographic panels. Dennis, you should time me, see how quickly I could do this. No, I feel like I'm the Ginsu knife guy because I'm going to say, but wait, there's just one more thing. So not only can you add infographics based on the Esri created content, you could build your own infographics. So let's take a look here. So let's say, for example, I'm wanted to highlight population, the elderly population. I want to build one with seniors. So I created one beforehand, but to show you the experience, now this UX is a little bit crude, and we are going to improve upon this, but I'll show you how it works. I'm going to do a search for health insurance. And I'm going to select the average dollar spent on health insurance. I'm going to drag and drop it right here, right? And now I'm going to give this, I could give it a different color, and I could change the shape and hit apply. So I've basically built my own infographic. So now I'm going to select that, and I built that, and I'm going to add it right here. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to add one more infographic. This is one of my favorites. This is where we have the top 3 tapestry segments, and it's going to illustrate another feature that we're working on. And I'll hit save. Oh, before I do that, another thing to emphasize, we realize that just because we have designers and we have a look and feel, that it may not fit within your organization. So you can also style these things. So if you're working in an organization that has their own corporate CSS or look and feel that maybe you work with, or a red and white company, you could select to style the report this way. So I'm going to hit apply here, and then I'll hit save. And all right. So I just created that report. I'm going to go back to that report player. I'm going to refresh. It's going to go to my portal, recognize that I've just created the new report. I'll select a new location. It's going to gather up that data, and it's going to bring it back to the report. And again, this is interactive. I can play with the map here that's working with. And now it's created this tapestry segment. So one of the things that we're working on, and I can illustrate here, we haven't done with all the panels, is that these things, when you save them as HTML files, will be very interactive. So you can see here, here's a tapestry widget that you're creating. So it's really kind of an interesting story. So last thing I'm going to show is that just to show how these could be used out in the field or applicable, we had a wildfire here in San Diego last week called the Border Fire. So here is the County of San Diego Fire Department creates a near real-time map of a fire situation. So this morning I built this report called the San Diego Fire Report. And basically, can you imagine when I went to their website to monitor the fire last week, they actually had our Esri's tech in there, so they have a web map right in there, and it's really cool because people could see how the fire's loading. But wouldn't it be interesting if you could create this interactive dashboard where you could not only provide geographic information about the fire incident, but you could also have information about the fire. So now I'm going to click on this fire polygon. It's again going to go back to the business analyst, gather the data, and create this kind of infographic panel. Now, not only can we know how many people live in the area that's affected, we'll know how many businesses are, and there's a variable in the American Community Survey where we have the number of households with no access to no vehicle. So this would be really important for a fire incident. Mike?
Cool. This guy doesn't enjoy what he does at all, does he?
Yes.
That was awesome, Gary. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so one thing, a little teaser, I guess. Gary is obviously working on some major redevelopment, if you will, around the business analyst capabilities. You got a little bit of a glimpse of that right at the end there. This flexibility means that this functionality now begins to apply not just to the traditional use cases for business analyst as a product, but begins to apply to use cases for business analytics across industries. And I think you'll share more of that with us tomorrow and during the course of the week. So thank you so much. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Cool. I want to thank the team really quickly before I turn it over to Helen. I know we're running long here, but thank you so much, everyone. These guys do great work. You can visit them this afternoon and tomorrow at the kiosks out in this area. Definitely come to the neighborhood area in the expo over the next few days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, in the convention center. I would encourage you, it's called a neighborhood, right? That's the community area where we want to connect, interact. Everybody from Esri and much of our partner community will be there. Gary's team will also be there. All of these guys will be there. Helen and I will be there. Come and find us and find each other and make that our gathering place for this community. Thank you so much.
All right, so you guys excited? Really? I was completely unconvinced by that. I mean, Gary sounded more excited than the entire audience, right? So are you excited? All right, good. Now, the $24,000 question is, when is it coming? End of the year, everything that Gary showed is going to be part of that. So Mike said, come and visit us. Come talk to everybody that's here. Throughout the next day and a half, all of this technology is on display. We're looking for alpha and beta testers. To all of my friends at CCM Institute that have spent the last year bugging me about reports, we've listened, we've taken your ideas, we've created it. To all those people in other industries, you can see the amazing job that's been done. These guys up here have spent 3+ weeks working with me almost every day. They have to listen to my